come on. Cove led you to the car, and Kyra wasn't too far behind. Okay, into the back, you two. Once the three of you were situated inside, Kyra started it and drove out of the residential area. When she hit a main road, the car sped up and she rolled the back windows down all the way. Hey! Cove started laughing as he kept trying in vain to keep his hair from flying into his eyes too much. Meanwhile, you closed your eyes as the wind whipped against your wet clothes. I said this drive was going to be good for getting air dried. Yeah, but I didn't agree to this much air. Cove tried pressing the window button, but nothing happened. His eyebrows furrowed in frustration.
No way!
You disabled the back? Sorry, can't hear you. Smiling deviously, Kyra turned on the radio and turned it up to be heard over the wind. You laughed and enjoyed the event. You jokingly complained about the situation. You were not a fan of this stunt. You danced in your seat to the music. I would dance in my seat to the music. You recognized the song immediately. Mouthing along to the words and moving about to the beat felt refreshing. Yeah, I would totally do that. Cove shook his head at you until he cracked a half smile. Slowly he relaxed and bopped a little to the beat of the song himself. Ooh, what is this? And then, something struck the side of your leg. Several papers were freed from under the car seats and were blown about. Oh, they can't go out the windows. Cove began to haphazardly reach around the space to try to get it all back under wraps. Amused, you helped. You helped frantically. You watched him struggle entertained. No, I would have helped frantically. You jumped to his aid immediately, trying to snatch up every single paper crashing around within your reach. As much as you both caught fistfuls, there was no stopping a few that got sucked out of the windows. Cove gasped. Mom, close the windows! Kyra offered no response other than a chuckle. She kept driving. The both of you had sour looks at that. Hope those papers weren't important. We got most of them. I know. Thanks. The sun set completely, and at that, Kyra rolled up the windows. Cove let out a big sigh and released the random bits of paper he had in his fists. My mom is crazy. He ran a hand through his windblown hair and laughed with a bit of exasperation. You felt good. You didn't know what was happening anymore. You were fed up. I have no idea what's happening anymore. After all of that, you wonder what was going to come next, biting your bottom lip. Cove watched you with interest until his focus was taken by a new comment from his mom. I bet you're not feeling damp anymore. No, but now I feel tricked. You could tell by his tone that at this point his complaints were more performative than serious. You spotted Kyra looking at you both a moment in the rearview mirror, smiling. You sided with Cove. You sided with Kyra. I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm not getting in the middle of this. You shook your head and looked out the window. Kyra continued driving. The radio volume was adjusted for the closed windows and everyone was sitting more comfortably. Kyra lowered the sound even more after pulling into a red light. She took the chance to turn around. You caught her coy smirk.
So?
Does anyone know what we drove past during the dry cycle? I'm not sure I want to. A movie theater. Okay, most places have one somewhere. It isn't that late, you know. We can probably still catch a show. Kyra is really desperate for spending some time with us. So I'm just gonna humor her. Really, Mom? We don't even know what'd be playing.
Come on.
That's what makes it fun. I want to see a movie. I'm not sure about that. No way, that's not fun. Heck yeah. Aren't my moms expecting me back soon? I'll say heck yeah. Both of you? He seemed hesitant. You gave him a smile and Cove eased up a bit. Aw, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating impulsive behavior every day, but it's important to seize the moment when you can. We might never have another night like this. And don't worry, Vaughn. I said I'd watched over you for the night, not just 10 minutes or so. I'll put your parents in the loop about hitting the movies as soon as we get there.
That's,
I didn't bring any shoes. You should always bring shoes when you're going out. I'm not wearing any either. It doesn't matter. Don't they need shoes? I don't know if I like any of these. I'm not wearing any either. It doesn't matter. I don't like any of these. I'm just gonna say this. My gut reaction was this, even though this is kind of a weird thing to just randomly say. You should always bring shoes when you're going out. I didn't know we were going anywhere. I thought we were just gonna be in the car.
It's alright.
We'll sneak through quick. No one will notice. You can do it just this once. My gosh, we're living on the edge. We're still living on the edge, sneaking into a theater with no shoes, with barefoot. I actually would not. This would not have been real because I at this age especially, I did not like walking around barefoot outside of the house. Yeah, indoors, barefoot's fine. Once we get outdoors, my feet are too delicate, and I was always very like obsessive about like my feet getting like, I don't know where the floor's been. You don't know where the floor, especially when you go into like other buildings like movie theaters. Like, I don't want to be walking around barefoot, stepping on who knows what, like stepping on the dirty floors or whatever. So this would not have been a thing. I definitely would have made sure I brought shoes with me, because I would not even have set foot on the pavement or the grass or anything without my shoes. So yeah, this is very unrealistic. Kyra drove into the theater parking lot and shut the engine off. With the unbuckling of her seatbelt, she ushered you and Cove out. Despite being hesitant to leave, once outside, Cove burst into a sprint towards the cinema. You hurried behind, but you figured the cold tarmac on his bare feet was what was fueling him on ahead. Inside, you noticed there were no lines. All the current shows had already started. Kyra paid that no mind and strode up towards the counter with some words of encouragement. A third of the running time is ads these days. We haven't missed anything. Meanwhile, Cove stood next to you awkwardly. But I want to see the previews. Colin is the kind of person who specifically waits. He stays outside of the theater until the previews are done. He does not like watching the previews at all because he hates how much they spoil movies, and so he avoids it like the plague. I, however, don't mind, and I like watching trailers and previews. Meanwhile, Cove stood next to you awkwardly. He shifted from one foot to the other and constantly kept looking around. His shady behavior would have made him much more likely to get caught than standing still would have if there were people around to really notice. It was pretty goofy. I think it's kind of cute. You offered him your shoes. Okay, so I did have my own shoes. Okay, good. Never mind. I take it back. You could choose to imply that you had shoes on. You offered him your shoes. Still, you consoled him. You teased him over it. You complained with him. You kept quiet. I'll console him. I love Cove. Not enough to give him my own shoes, because I really want my own shoes. Maybe if we took it to maybe in the next level, I'll love him enough to give him my own shoes. For right now, I'm just going to console him. You poked Cove's arm to get his attention. It'll be okay, Cove. His expression softened to an appeased smile. I should have at least gotten him, like, I don't know, paper towels from the bathroom or something to wrap around his feet. That's what I would have done, realistically. Yeah, thanks. Because that's what I would have done. If I was caught without shoes and I was going into, like, the movie theater, I would wrap my feet around with... Ooh, but then I have to walk into the bathroom, which is the worst part of the movie theater. It's the worst place for me to be walking around the movie theater is the bathroom. That would be paradox. But I probably have to be going to the bathroom eventually anyway, so it would have to be lesser of the two evils. Eliciting a sigh of relief out of you, Kyra returned with the tickets in hand. She quickly herded you and Cove towards the showing room. I'm so sorry for the little hiccup, but hold on. We've almost made it home free. Once we sit down, it'll be smooth sailing. The lights were already off in the showing room, but the movie hadn't started yet. The upcoming movie trailers were still playing.
Aha!
Yes! Keeping her volume in a hushed voice, Kyra couldn't help but burst with excitement over your luck. You followed her down the walkway until she spotted open seats in the middle-ish area of the theater. What movie are we even watching? Kyra pointed at the seats, looking over her shoulder at you and Cove, waiting for input. Cove nodded and he decided to give her a thumbs up, and she led the way. When you reached your seats, Kyra sighed contentedly. Cove gave a sigh of his own and lifted his feet to sit cross-legged instead of keeping them down on the floor. Yeah, that's what I would be doing. I would not want to put my feet on that dirty floor. He then leaned over and whispered to you. Do you have any idea what the movie is? I was hoping you would know. No, I didn't hear the name or anything when your mom bought the tickets. Oh boy. After a couple more previews, the main event began. It dawned on you quickly that it was a horror film. Oh no, I don't like horror films. One about a group of students being haunted by dangerous ghosts. You were psyched. You could live with that. You thought this was going to be annoying. You became nervous. You were terrified. You couldn't do this. You had to leave. I'd be terrified. Yeah, I would be terrified. I could live with that, but I would be probably more terrified. I think it would be more interesting if I say I was terrified. The movie was only starting. You were already petrified. That was perfect. You hated it. I hated it. Glancing over at Cove, you noticed that he looked less than thrilled with the movie. He bit down on his bottom lip and stared at the screen with trembling eyes. Cove had never been a fan of ghosts or intentionally frightening things. That was something you learned about him early on. Great, so we're both scaredy cats. This is going to be a disaster. If both of us are scaredy cats, then you remain still. You tapped Cove on the shoulder to get his attention. You angled your body in your seat to be closer to him. You grabbed a hold of his hand. You covered your ears. Yeah, I'd grabbed a hold of his hand. Your fingers wrapped tight around his, and he jumped slightly at the unexpected touch. But his expression softened when he peeked at you out of the corner of his eyes. He watched you with an unspoken question written all over his face. Will you be okay? You shook your head no. Now that I'm holding his hand, I'll say yes. You gave your hand a squeeze to silently voice support. That made you feel good. He gave your hand a squeeze to silently voice support. That made you feel good. This is sweet. I like this a lot. Sometimes the other people in the theater screamed or cheered or clapped depending on what was happening. I'd be shutting my eyes. Your heart was pounding in your chest when the movie finally came to an end. The main character resolved the hauntings, but in a dark conclusion, they didn't make it out alive. Yeah. You stayed to let the credits roll and for the theater to clear out. Then it was time to head back to the car. I'd be a little annoyed. I'm not gonna lie. If that was me in real life, I'd be a little annoyed that the Kyra didn't ask any of us what we would have wanted to see. She asked for no input at all. So that's the only thing that would have, bothered me about this whole thing. Both you and Cove took the same seats in the back of the car again. Even though it was late, Kyra was exuding an optimistic energy. We survived it! Your nerves were still calming down from the movie. Cove gave you a worried glance and then a hard look at his mom. A movie wasn't ever gonna kill us. It was gonna make us... A movie wasn't ever gonna kill us. It was gonna make us unhappy. She deflated a little at the chastising. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, gang. I didn't know it'd be that bad. Maybe you should ask... I don't know. It just seems like that's the normal thing to do, is if the group of you are going to a movie, if a group of you decided spontaneously, let's go to the movies, wouldn't you discuss amongst yourselves what movie to watch? Wouldn't you sort of try to decide instead of just having one person? I mean, I guess it's fair that she bought the tickets, she paid for it, but it's I would like to think that as a mom you would want to try to have some attempt to making sure that Cove and that your guests, your son and your guest, actually wanted to see the movie that you were trying to get to show, or at least being given a heads up. It made me really tense. I guess that's the point of horror stuff, but I kind of don't want to have to feel like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not for everyone. Yeah, well, you should have thought of that before you decided for us what movie we're watching. He narrowed his eyes defensively at the attempt to encourage him. Yeah, it wasn't just me either. Oh, Vaughn, how are you feeling? It really scared me. I hated it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. It was scary, but I had fun. You shrugged. I'm just gonna say it really scared me. Kyra frowned at that. I'm really sorry. I should have asked if there were off-limit genres. Yeah, you should have. Kyra, you should have... You're an adult. You should have known that. I'm gonna have to... Yeah. As an adult myself, I'm gonna say you really should have known that. Even teenagers would have known that. That's the polite thing to do. It's the manners, Kyra, manners. I think I have some making up to do. Who wants dessert or just some regular food? What? You were surprised when you realized Kyra wasn't on the way home, but turning into a drive-through burger restaurant. I'm not hungry. Oh, yeah, that is the way. If you want to apologize to me, food is a great way to do it. The way to my heart. So that I can forgive Kyra if she gets me some good food. Burger place would not have been my first choice. Going to a fast food place would not have been my first choice, even at that age. But it's free food. It's free food, so I'm not gonna complain. I'm not hungry. You shook your head no. Yeah, you nodded. Why not? Yeah! That's the spirit. Get whatever you want. Yeah, you... Awesome. Ooh, look at all these choices. A hamburger, a cheeseburger, a chicken sandwich, a spicy chicken sandwich, French fries, onion rings, a salad, chicken nuggets, mozzarella sticks, a soda, milkshake, soft serve cone, a chocolate chip cookie. First, start with a spicy chicken sandwich. And a milkshake. Let's bring all the boys to the yard. French fries. Actually, I would pick onion rings over French fries. And then, at that age, I wouldn't have gotten a salad. Nowadays, I would get a salad. But mozzarella sticks, a soft serve cone, and a soft serve cone. Cool. Yeah, that's everything. Is that all right?
Of course.
It's A-okay. Good. Because I did not want to see that movie, apparently. Cove was tickled by the size of your list and had no disapproval over it. Kyra pulled up the window and ordered what you had asked for first. She then decided to order one of everything on the value menu. Whoa, what are you going to do with all of that? Eat it.
Really?
The whole menu? Even after Vaughn picked most of that already? Thanks, Cove. I'm such a porker. That's right, there are only maybe 10 things on it and they're about $1 each. I can swing it, and besides, whatever we don't finish, I'm gonna feed your dad. He'll be in heaven. It's a good point, it's a good idea. Cove sighed affectionately at his mother's antics. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're quite welcome. A few minutes later, Kyra exchanged her money for multiple bags of food, and she quickly tossed to you both in the back seats. She then drove off into the night. Can you pass me something? What should I grab? Surprise me. You chose one of the wrapped sandwiches and handed it to her. You had no idea if it was a burger or something else.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Accepting that this is what was happening, Cove shrugged and started pulling food out of the bags for himself. I like that. Accepting that this was what was happening. I love that wording. Cove ended up with some onion rings and he happily munched on them. You selected something randomly. You made sure to grab something you liked. I'm a foodie, I have to grab something I liked. Kyra's crazy ride just kept going. You had to wonder if this night would ever end. The adventure continued, and you were so preoccupied in the back seat that you almost didn't realize the car had stopped. Kyra turned to look over her shoulder. Okay, party people, it seems we've reached the end of the road. Confused, you checked out the window and saw nothing except empty road ahead. And then you noticed it. Now leaving sign? Kyra took you through the entire town. What are we doing here? Kyra turned the car around and parked it along the side of the road. I think you both could use a break to stretch your legs. I doubt anyone is going to come through here this time of night. Besides, I had to make a call, so go on. See, the thing is, we had just seen a horror movie, and so after watching a scary movie, despite the fact that I have food, going out of town, in the outskirts of town, in the middle of the night, I'd be pretty freaked out. Not gonna lie. Really freaked out. Cove shook his head and got out of the car without a fight. I'm not that brave. I guess I'll follow Cove. You got out and caught up to Cove. He was busy looking at the stars and stretching his arms while he strolled around. I mean, I'd like to stretch my legs, so... And Cove still doesn't have any shoes. You thought being there was exciting. Being there was pretty cool in your mind. You didn't care much overall. You felt worried. You were mad. I just felt tired. You followed aimlessly. It was late and you were starting to feel exhausted. Sleepy? Yes. Your words came out in a big yawn. Looking sympathetic, Cove smiled at you. Shortly after, you noticed Cove's expression changed. His eyebrows furrowed, and it seemed like he was thinking hard about what he wanted to say next.
I'm so sorry.
Vaughn, I'm really sorry for my mom being crazy tonight. She isn't always like this. Seriously. Why is she being like this now? I think she feels like she has to get out there and do things with me while she can, and she wants to make the time memorable. This visit has been really different than the others, and it didn't start off good. Didn't start off well, but it's okay. Thinking about how Kyra's trip began. My husband is an English teacher, okay, everyone? Even before I met Colin, I was big on the good versus well thing. Thinking about how Kyra's trip began this summer, you could understand why Cove was thinking along those lines. She probably wanted all the trouble to be worth it in the end. Are you having a good time with your mom around? Okay, I get it. She shouldn't have made me be a part of it. You nodded understanding. She gave you a taste of your own medicine. You said nothing. Are you having a good time with your mom around? Yeah, it's still weird having her and Dad in the same house. But I love her. She's my mom. I like hanging out with her. Most of the time. It went silent between you both, so you jumped when you heard the sound of a car door closing. Cove, Vaughn! You turned to see Kyra by the driver's side, waving. The sight brought a smile to Cove's face, and he quickly made her way over to where you both were standing. Thanks for waiting. I didn't mind.
My baby.
How did I end up with such a polite boy? She ruffled his hair, and Cove lowered his head, accepting the compliment. You thought about how interesting it was to see how Cove interacted with his mom. And then the memory hit you. That first summer, Cove ran away to his very spot, trying to find his way back to his mom. And now here they were together. You kept that thought to yourself. You whispered about it to Cove. You said it out loud. I'm gonna whisper it to Cove. Taking a step closer to Cove, you leaned in close to share the moment just with him. Isn't it strange that your mom took us here? This is where you went to try seeing her when you moved to Sunset Bird. Cove flinched and his eyes darted over to his mom, worried that she heard. When he was, see, that's right. That means I did the right thing by saying it just to him and not to both of them. When he was satisfied she didn't, he turned back. Yeah, it's weird, but she doesn't know it happened. At least I'm pretty sure she doesn't. Really? Dad likes to tell her things are fine, so she doesn't worry. You decided to inform Kyra. I mean, it's not my business to tell her if Cove really doesn't want me to, so you decided you nodded and kept the secret. Cove looked at you gratefully, and you shared a conspiratorial smile. Anyways, it's kind of cool to be here, right on the edge of town. Exactly! We're standing on a precipice. I think so too. I don't really see what's so different about it. You didn't have a strong opinion about it. You nodded along, not wanting to press the subject either way. Kyra let out a big breath of air. We should probably call it a night, huh? Yes, let's go. Finally. You shrugged. You felt disappointed it was actually over. Let's go. I can't wait to collapse in bed. Kyra shyly smiled and gestured to the car. Quietly, you all made your way back to it. Cove naturally followed you, taking the seat nearby in the back with a collection of fast food bags still strewn about. You rested your head into the seat as the car roared to life. As you did, Cove leaned in close to whisper. Hey. I can talk to your moms if they do get mad about tonight for some reason. It was my mom's idea. You didn't have a choice. Thank you. Thanks, I might need it. I'm just glad we're heading back now. This was worth it even if they get mad. You nodded. I mean, if it was my dad, like not these two moms, it was my parents, I don't think they would, I don't know, I think my dad would have been okay as long as Kyra said something. So, I'm just gonna say thank you. You're welcome. Cove smiled bashfully at you but said nothing else. The drive home was smooth and uneventful. The radio was off completely, and you felt your eyelids getting heavy. Your head rested on the side of Cove feels like he has a nice, soft, comfortable shoulder. Your head came to rest on Cove. You were too tired to keep your head up, and it felt quite comfortable there. Cove didn't have any issues there. He leaned into it. He must have been exhausted too. You were happy to stay close like that. It was warm and comfortable. Aww. When you opened your eyes, you expected to still be in the car, not your bedroom. It was somehow already morning. You couldn't remember how you ended up there. Sitting up in bed, you thought about how last night was quite an experience. It almost felt like a dream more than a real event, but it definitely happened. And you were glad that you got to have a spontaneous escapade. You were glad that you got to have a spontaneous escapade this summer. Cool. That wasn't what I expected, but having some fun, spontaneous times with Kyra, other than the really strange and weird, I don't know, the whole not talking to us about what movie to watch, that was really odd. I don't think I've ever been in that situation before. It just felt strange and weird. But I guess Kyra does have her eccentricities, you know? Alright, so we've done all of the DLCs. So let's move on to... let's do road trip. I'm not a huge fan of road trips in general, just because, I don't know, I don't like traveling by car for long periods of time. Certainly not past... if once it gets to the 2.5, 3 hour mark, I get really, like, upset and restless. So I think we do take trips to New York, and that's not too bad. And the New York trip, again, takes like 4 or 5 hours, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. Anything beyond 5-hour trip, I would just rather take a plane, just fly over there. Because, yeah, I'm not a big road trip person. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity, as both your family and Coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because, parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. Now, that's different. If you have an RV camper, I think going on a road trip is actually kind of fun, would actually be a lot of fun. So, that specifically, I would be behind. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. Oh, that's awesome. I would love to do that. You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it as best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. Yeah, it also would be a lot more fun, I think, if you were going with another family. Not that it wouldn't be fun with my own family, don't get me wrong, but I think being able to go with a friend and their family would double the excitement. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Coves spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people's inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You could relate to Ma. It was way too early. Personally, you were as raring to go as your mom. You felt like you were a middle ground between the two. At that age, I was a bit of a morning person, especially if I was excited to go on a trip. So nowadays, not so much of a morning person, very much a night owl. Pretty much once I hit college, that was the case. But yeah, back then, personally, you were as raring to go as your mom. I would say at that age, I was raring to go as your mom. You stretched your arms out and took in some deep breaths. The air was still a little damp from dew, but you didn't mind it. And then, at the end of the chain, came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Vaughn is the youngest, and I'd never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. That is true. At least that's how things went in my household. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with the answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, and their sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed, Kyra was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You were fine with the arrangements. You were excited to sleep in the loft. You felt sharing a bed with your parents was going to be awkward. You were looking forward to a sleepover with your moms. You weren't too happy either, but didn't make a fuss. You thought it was unfair that Cove had to sleep on the floor.